Hello and welcome to this topic for the Task Management and Time Blocking Summit 2022. In this session, we're going to be talking about 10 considerations when you are working to improve your team's collaboration. Now, the question should be, who am I? My name's Art Gelwicks. As you can see, that's me up there. I am a digital transformation coach and consultant. I am also the owner of Gelwicks Tech. I have been working with digital collaboration technologies, business process optimization strategies, project management, training, and process improvement for more than 30 years. And one of the things that I visit most often with clients and customers is this understanding about how to get their teams to collaborate more effectively. More often than not, the thought process is we will purchase something that will help us collaborate. And what I want us to go through over the next few minutes is an understanding that this is often not a technology issue. In most cases, it is not a technology issue. And there's 10 things that I have found over time that if you are leading a transformation effort for specifically team collaboration, you should be taking into consideration. So let's, in the interest of time, jump right into them. First, understand that improving your team collaboration will not occur spontaneously. This is not something you can go make a purchase, deploy software, put it in your people's hands, give them a little bit of training on the software, and then expect collaboration to get better. That doesn't happen. The salespeople may tell you that's the case. I'm telling you after 30 years of experience, that is not the truth. What it requires, the tools may be extremely powerful and effective, but they require a plan. They require consideration for your team, and they require understanding of the roadblocks that you will encounter for implementing any technology solution with your team to be able to recognize a long-term success. So first and foremost, not everyone learns at the same pace. We have all heard this in education, that everybody learns in their own ways. Well, this does not just end when our classroom training ends, when we graduate from somewhere or we leave school. Our method of learning continues as we are adults and we move through our careers and in the working world. As a leader, I need to be cognizant of the fact that my team, if it's made up of 6 people, I have 6 different learners. I may have some that are similar, but I do not have 6 identical learners. Therefore, however I communicate this plan, this process, and these tools that I've outlined in the beginning part of this, it is not going to be understood the same way. We've all heard the adage that half of communication is lost after it's spoken. And that's partially because we have a visualization of what the message is that we are trying to deliver to a team or to an individual, but we have no control over how that message is actually received. This is a perfect example of that. Understanding not only the how and the what, but the why moves us much closer to getting everyone to understand how important the collaboration efforts are going to be. As a leader, I have to be cognizant of the fact that it may take longer for other people to get to that point of acknowledgement and recognition through no fault of their own. In most cases, through fault of my efforts to deliver the message to them because I've failed to recognize their methods of learning. Second, the best times for work to happen differs for everyone. We have seen this demonstrated so clearly over the past few years. Up until before the pandemic, we were very much a go to work, get to work in the morning, work during the day, go home. Some of the more eager people would work in the evenings and on weekends, but everybody was on a fairly consistent schedule. Well, with the pandemic occurring, people working remotely, people working anywhere at any time, this idea of having peak and off-peak productive times being different from everyone was highly crystallized. And if you look at it even more closely, those peak and off-peak productive times not only vary between the members of your team, they can vary within the team member themselves, depending on situation, timing, environment, physical health. There's any number of factors that have to come into play. So if you're creating and trying to come up with a strategy to improve team collaboration, taking time to understand and to ask and to discover and explore when do people do their best work, and then making sure that your strategy and your tools allow them to do that is one of the most effective ways to ensure a successful outcome from this type of exercise. Third, optimal communication mediums are variable from person to person. Some people prefer printed media. Some people like to have checklists. Some people like to have a video demonstration of how something's supposed to work, or diagrams, or flowcharts. It's all variable, and that ties back to how things are learned. Well, I keep stressing this learning aspect of it for a primary reason, because if your team is going to collaborate on something, they need to operate from a point of common connection. And if not everyone has the same understanding and the same knowledge as to what you're trying to collaborate on, some people will be operating from a deficit, and other people will be working from an advantage, which creates a dynamic stress within that team that there's no piece of technology that can mitigate. So understanding that having those multiple communication mediums, recognizing what is optimal for each one, and then making sure that that's resonated as part of your strategy can go miles towards helping this successful effort. Fourth, don't assume people retain your procedures. If you create a procedure, you create a process mechanism, you may be comfortable with it. It may have taken you weeks to create this process or this procedure, and you deliver it to them for everyone to work collaboratively on and execute efficiently. You have to remember that unless they are doing it frequently, and I will be talking about the impact of frequency in a little while, they won't likely retain 100% of that procedure. That's the reason why those communications methods and documentation methods become so critical to effective collaboration. If people are having to take time to figure out what a process is, then they're taking time away from effectively executing that process and effectively collaborating on the work products that come through it. So every time you roll out a process, every time you roll out a strategy, every time you roll out a procedure, I ask that you do this. Assume this will be the first time the people see this, and assume they will only see it once a year. If you do that, regardless of how frequently they actually do see it, if you assume they will only see it once a year, you can put yourself in the mindset to say, yep, what do I have to do when somebody has to basically start from scratch? Fifth, do not become focused on singular features within a particular tool or technology. It's very easy to become myopic around a function set within a deployed tool, especially if, for leadership's benefit, that particular feature is being highlighted. So if it's something such as file management, if it's something such as video meetings, which we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, the reaction was that video meetings would be the panacea for all problems working remote. And as we all have recognized, that is far from the truth. It is very easy for leadership to become focused on something, especially if it is a feature that is to their benefit. Recognizing and understanding a complete feature set within the technology deployment that you have, and then framing it as to how it might benefit your team, can help you keep a more holistic approach to these team collaboration efforts. Now, I will address the counterpart to this, or counterpoint rather, of too much at once, but we'll get to that in a little bit. As I mentioned before, frequency and familiarity. The more often you do a process, the more integrated it becomes into your psyche, you don't have to follow the steps as often. Although, as many of us have seen, we can become overly familiar with a process and then we wind up shortcutting the process, introducing error and inconsistency and failure within it. That frequency of repetition and that familiarity can often create situations where leadership starts to recognize or become hypersensitive to failings in the process and say, well, why didn't you do this right? And why didn't you follow this step? And why didn't you follow that step? Well, if you have executed a process so many times where you are no longer following the steps, but you are following them from rote memory, the likelihood is good that you are going to encounter these kind of dropouts in the process themselves. So supplementing the fact that a process may be frequently used and then being able to say from a collaborative standpoint, can someone check to make sure all the steps were executed, means that you have cohesive engagement on those executions. As I mentioned before, multimedia types are far superior to a singular approach. And this is often what happens with technological solutions. A technological solution will demonstrate a strength in a particular area, say document management. So then the determination is that all processes and procedures need to be executed through this documentation management system. However, as we've already talked about, many members of the team may not resonate to that particular type of methodology. So you need to have those supplemental approaches, the checklists, the workflows, the video documentation, that all give you the structure that your team can go back and look at. And I'm just as much integrated into this as anyone else is. I am a checklist and video type of guy. I like to see demonstration videos of a process, and I want a step-by-step checklist, something that literally gets to the level of detail where I don't have to think about the process, I just have to execute it. Because for my methodologies and my approach and my psyche, that is what resonates most effectively. And leadership needs to recognize that if you are trying to build a truly collaborative team. Because when you have people who are checklist focused, as I am, or you have people who are just written documentation focused, as others are, when you are putting something new in process, you have to make sure the team collaborates on both of those types of deliverables. Eighth, you need to teach people how to find their own answers. Team collaboration is just that. They need to be able to operate on the fly. If they have to stop and go and reach out to the leader or reach out to a manager or reach out to an executive to be able to get basic answers for problems that they're encountering, they're not truly growing into a collaborative team. They're growing into a bunch of people who can't operate unless they're pointed in the right direction. Team collaboration needs to leverage a term and a concept that I use all the time called thinking out loud. Being able to say in a group chat, in a discussion, wherever, hey, I'm having a problem, or this is an idea I have, and facilitate the openness necessary to be able to put those ideas and those questions and those problems out in a common forum in the team and know that that common forum is a safe area for them to be able to admit that they don't know the answer to everything and they need help finding it and working together to find the best solution. Ninth, you have to be cognizant of passive-aggressive behavior. This is the insidious piece of change transformation. One of the most common coaching problems I run into is leaders will come to me and say, I can't get my team to adopt this feature. I can't get them to do this thing. They don't want to do this thing. Technically, as a leader or a manager, you could mandate that execution. I will guarantee that a mandate will be less than 75% successful. You could force the issue, sure, but they will find ways, whether consciously or subconsciously, to bypass the process or undermine it in many cases, if it's something that they have a built-in resistance to. Passive-aggressive behavior, while not overt, will disconnect your team from each other, When you have certain team members who are resistant to a particular part of your process, you need to identify those quickly. You need to isolate those quickly, and then you need to find out why they are and see if they can be mitigated and addressed. It's not a matter of going in and saying, hey, stop acting this way. It's more a matter of saying, why do you feel a need to act this way? And what can we do so that you don't feel that need anymore? How do we work forward to that? 10th, evaluate, but do not implement everything. This to me is probably the most critical piece within any technological deployment when it comes to collaboration. And when I'm doing coaching exercises with teams as they roll out technologies as part of their digital transformation, often teams will make the mistake of saying, hey, we got this new tool. Let's look at all the features. Let's put them all in play. Let's use all the... And they get completely overwhelmed and they lose focus. And you wind up either A, not using any of the features, B, going back to the old ways you used to do it because you really have lost grasp as to where the transformation was supposed to take you. Or C, which is probably the worst case, in a situation where the technology is considered a hindrance rather than a help. Taking time to understand the feature set within a tool is critical. Rolling that out is far more sensitive than it is critical. Understanding how functionality will be used and making sure that documentation and process and flow and videos and meeting interactions and everyone is on the same page, understanding that in this team, this is how we're going to use this feature. And what the benefit is of that is what can make or break a technology transformation. So how does this come to a close? I've talked a lot about tech, but the most important aspect, and the thing that unfortunately is often lost because it's also the hardest aspect, is the recognition that this has nothing to do with technology. Collaboration is rarely a technology problem. It is almost always a people problem. No matter what piece of technology you've chosen, what software you've purchased, whatever you've licensed, whatever you've deployed, it begins and ends with the people using it. Not the leadership who made the decision, not the purchasing department who approved the purchase, not the IT department that rolled it out, but the people who are actually using that technology. And there is nothing that can make that technology work if those people are not willing to work with it. I appreciate you taking time to listen to me today. And if you have questions about this, if this has raised questions in your mind, if you have encountered struggles like this before and you aren't quite sure which direction to go, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to me. You can reach out to me at gelwickstech.com. You can email me. The main thing I want you to do, though, is when it comes to collaboration, understand that there are technology solutions out there that will help you, but they will not solve it for you. That's up to you, good coaching, and effective planning. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.